Hello, this is your friend and brother V. Simpson Turner Jr. Again, welcoming you to the Public Wants to Know show. Today, we want to talk to you about uh, several tragic murders that have happened within our nation. Uh, we first and foremost, since George Floyd, brother who was in the custody of four Minneapolis police officers, one police officer put his knee on his neck and held it there for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And then, even after the paramedics came, refused to remove it. None of the other officers intervened. None of the officers tried to prevent it, or none of the officers tried to stop this officer, who was not worthy of a name, and the heinous act that he committed against our brother George Floyd. And as a result of that, there's been several incidents of civil unrest, several protests that are going on, as well as has opened the eyes of America on various other cases that have remained unsolved. And one is Breonna Taylor. We talked to you about an EMT that was in Louisville, who the police came in with a no-knock warrant. The person that they were looking for had already been apprehended earlier that day. They came in, and her boyfriend had a registered gun. He pulled it because he thought the men were breaking in, and they shot Breonna 8 times. And as her mother said, she never thought that she would ever have to tell Breonna to be careful in her own home. She was always worried about COVID-19 and her working 12 hours in 2 different hospitals, and told her to wash her hands. What a tragic event that is. And then also now, last August, a young man who was a very peaceful young man, Elijah McClain. He was going about to go to the store to get a couple of bottles of iced tea. And as he was walking home, someone called 911 and said that there was a man wearing a mask who looked a little suspicious, that could be a good guy or a bad guy, and thought the police should investigate. The police came upon the scene, and as they arrived on the scene, they went about and stopped Mr. McDonald. Mr. McDonald said that he would hope that they would keep their distance, that he hadn't done anything, that he doesn't have a gun, he doesn't do those kinds of things, and that, he's a humble and nice person. He doesn't hold it against people who eat meat. He's vegetarian, and he's never done anything bad to anyone. And as a result of it, the police, while took him into custody, and asked the paramedics to come, and they shot him with 500 milliliters of a drug that's used to sedate individuals. And subsequently, Mr. McClain died. We have found out a lot of things about Mr. McClain, that he was someone who did not even kill flies. He played a violin for kittens because he thought that they were lonely and needed help. And this young man had on a mask. Remember last year there was no COVID-19, so there was no need of wearing masks. But he had on a mask because he was anemic, and he would often get cold. And so he was walking at night, he had his music on, and he had on a black mask on his face. And as a result of that, an individual called 911 to say that. So these police officers, and let me just first preface by saying, I know a lot of excellent police officers, and I'm not condemning all police officers, and I respect the job they're doing. It's very difficult, but there are also some very bad police officers, and all of these officers in these 3 cases are bad police officers, and these police officers need to be removed, as they have done in Minneapolis. They need to do that in Kentucky, in Louisville, and in Aurora, Colorado, where this happened to Mr. McClain. They don't need to be put on administrative duty. They need to be fired, and they need to be brought up on criminal charges, because this is heinous and it has to stop. Subsequently, also, let me just also remind those of you who have the Amy Cooper syndrome. That's the young lady who called the police, as some people do, on African Americans, because they know that with privilege that they have the opportunity to do something of that nature, and the police will come running. Let me say to you, you all are just as guilty as these rogue police officers. You should not, under any circumstance, call the police to come to deal with someone of an African American descent because you feel, as this individual in Aurora, Colorado, who's obviously, we know he's a Caucasian person who, like Amy Cooper, thought that that the police would come to deal with an African American. That is a racist practice, and it's got to stop. Too often, people call the police on African Americans unjustly. You must stop, because you are part of the problem. It's not just the police, it's you all as well. And also, we have to deal with that which is a paramount problem in this nation. And so I'm asking you all, who are fair-minded individuals, to cautiously think about that. And Amy Cooper, you remember, is the young lady who called the police and made this whole hysterical rant because she was a woman and she was Caucasian and she had an African American male, and she started raising her voice and acting like she was in trouble in Central Park, where this African American male was bird watching and asked her to please put her dog on a leash, and she called the police. And the only thing that saved my brother, who was in Central Park, from the police coming and doing something harmful to him is because of the video. And the only thing that has brought many of these, unlike Breonna's case, to light is because of the video. And we will continue to employ all of those who are African descent. If you get into some situation where some of these individuals are acting the way that they're acting, start your video rolling, because that's the only way that it will help you in the court of public opinion and also in the court of law. So again, we're not condemning all police officers, because all police officers are not bad. We have a lot of heroic ones who do a great job daily. But there are some of you out there who are terrible and do not need to be police officers. You do not need to be employed at all. And so we are calling on our government, and I'm going to the Congress, because I can't go any higher than that for anybody of any kind of respectable means. So our Congress, our Senate, to enact laws where it's a crime for not only police officers to do what they're doing to African Americans, but also a crime for anybody that calls on an African American, the police, just because they think by their right of privilege that the police will come and adhere to whatever they're saying. We want that to become a crime, a federal crime as well, so that people won't just be arbitrarily just calling. And I've experienced it myself, where some other person of another persuasion called the police on us unjustly. So I know exactly what I'm talking about. This is not something that I read in a book, not something someone told me. This is something I've experienced. So we're calling on them for that. And we hope they have the wherewithal to be able to do that. Again, my friends, thank you for listening to this. The public wants to know. This is an informational presentation where we bring information about things going on in our nation and in our world, and so that you all will stay informed. And we thank you again for listening to us. We ask that you will follow us on Twitter. It's Dr. DRVSTJR on Twitter. You'll enjoy that. Those of you my Twitter friends, you'll enjoy that if you follow us. And on the gram, Dr. V. Simpson Turner Jr. on the gram. All right. Thank you again. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Dr. V. Simpson Turner Jr. Thank you again for listening to us, and we hope to see you again soon. And remember, it will get better. This has been your host, V. Simpson Turner Jr., the Public Wants to Know Show. It will get better.